Hello. Alright, here we go with episode 10.
The 10th and final episode of Making a Murderer concludes the series just as the first episode opened it, with portions of interviews with Stephen Avery, his mother, his father, his defense attorneys, his civil attorneys, his cousin, and upwards of a dozen more people who would be expected to stand up for him and portray his murder conviction in the most sympathetic light. In fact, of all the people interviewed in episode 10, only one, Brendan Dassey's public defender Len Kaczynski, could possibly be considered to be at all unconvinced of Avery's and Dassey's innocence. And he gets about a sentence in the episode. Instead, that episode focuses on Avery's new love, Sandy Greenman.
She likes everything I like. Sandy's mostly the important person in my life, and in my future.
Wait, didn't he say something similar to someone else a few episodes ago? Wasn't he madly in love with Jody Stokowski?
Well, I love you. I got your pictures all over today.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't forget to kiss him.
Kiss him, feel him.
Return.
Yeah, I do.
Dream of me.
Yeah, I do.
This phone call on the night Teresa Halbach disappeared is presented not only as an alibi for Avery, although Dassey mentions it in his confession to interrogators in yet another thing he says that matches up perfectly with the available evidence, but it also serves as evidence of Avery's kind, tender heart.
Alright, so we're going to talk about Jody. Jody obviously was his girlfriend, his fiance, when he was released after 18 years in prison for the rape. They met, I believe, right after he got out of prison, and they were together all the way up until he was arrested for the murder. Alright, now Sandy comes in years later, after Jody's already long gone and left him, starting off as a pen pal, as a friend, someone who is trying to talk with him about God and, being positive and things like that, showing her support, believing in his innocence. And after years of communication back and forth, and after her husband passes away, they start a relationship. We're talking years. We're not talking, 2 hours, okay? Episodes. Remember, this is all 10 years things going on here, so, yeah.
He loved Jody so much and was so sweet to her in that phone call. How could he possibly have brutally raped and killed another woman that very same night? But the better question is, where is Jody Stokowski now? Why isn't she still with Stephen? Because she thinks he's a monster and a murderer, telling HLN's The Nancy Grace Show that Avery beat her and threatened her routinely. She claims he once said he would throw a blow dryer into the bathtub with her, and another time said he would kill her, her family, and a friend of hers. In fact, after one particularly violent incident in 2004, she took out a temporary restraining order against him. So why did she proclaim his innocence in Making a Murderer? Because, like a typical abuser, he threatened her with violence if she dared to tell the truth about him.
Alright, so all these claims that Jody's making for the Nancy Grace Show with her producer, I believe it was interviewing her. She also says that she ate 2 boxes of rat poison. Come on. You would be dead if you did that. And any person who has been abused by someone, especially physically abused by someone, and they go to the police or they go to the hospital and they ask for help, they're going to get help, okay? They're going to get help that they might not necessarily want. They're going to be taken away from their abuser. Their abuser is not going to have any contact with them because the police don't fuck around with that, alright? And I know this from experience, obviously. I have an ex-husband who was abusive. And yes, I know how, as the abused person, you can justify things to yourself to accept it and be able to tolerate it and stay with that person for a while. But obviously there gets to be a certain point where it has to be stopped, and you ask for help and you get away from them. And if that was where she was, that she was eating rat poison or whatever to try to escape him, she would have gotten away from him. Her parole officer, probation officer, whatever she was, would have helped her get away, would have helped do whatever it took. The police would have to arrest Stephen, to charge him with abuse, to get her away from him and into a safe place. She was not stuck in the trailer. She was not stuck on the property like she claimed to have been in that interview. That whole thing was ridiculous, and I'm sorry. Honestly, it completely broke my heart when I watched that interview with Jody, because I did believe, watching the documentary, that she did love him. She did really love him, but she basically just comes out and says, I never loved him. Basically, I'm a gold digger, and I was only there for the money. That's the only reason I put up with his abuse. And I'm sorry. I don't believe anything you say now. I don't believe anything you say anymore. Where's the charges? You had a temporary restraining order? Where's the charges? Where's the proof? Yeah, I know she says she filed reports. Yeah, sure. Maybe that can be verified. I can't find them. I didn't look for them. Don't care. I don't believe that just because there's a report that means that it's true. She claims a lot of things in that video, and if you watching the documentary, if you listen to her version of why she's leaving, she's forced to. She's forced to leave the property. She's forced to not have contact with Stephen, and she still is resisting. She's still saying, I'm still here. I wish I could talk to him so I could tell him, see, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. I love you, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened and why they stopped contact. I know that she at some point probably felt so much pressure from the police that she was getting in trouble all the time. They were putting pressure on her just like they were the family throughout all this stuff to get her to talk. I know that she was on the witness list for the prosecution. I don't know why they didn't call her. That's a little suspicious, don't you think? I mean, I would have to wonder why they didn't call her. She would have been great to get up there on the stand and say, yeah, he's abusive, he did all this stuff to me. But at the time, I don't believe that's what she was going to say. I don't. And that's why they didn't call her. But, as far as now, yeah, she sees Making a Murderers come out. They're getting all this attention. Steven's got this badass attorney now, Kathleen Zellner. She's probably going to get him out. That's what she says she can do, and I believe her. She's not a shit talker, and she's not playing around. I believe she's going to find the real killer, and I believe that that's all it's going to take to just make this whole thing stop, get those two out of prison, and get some investigation going on the people that need to be investigated. So, yeah, I believe Jody now is feeling completely left out. She's not going to get any of that money that they're going to come into again, Miss Gold Digger, because there's going to be lawsuits. Oh, yeah, there's going to be lawsuits. And I hope that there's a lot of jobs lost, and I hope that there's a lot of people paying for what they did to these two. But, yeah, Jody wants to get involved in that. She had to go make her, little $500 or whatever the hell she got for that interview. And that's all she gets. Whatever. Say whatever you want, Jody. You make me sad. That's all I can say. I wish that you hadn't said that stuff. I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
This breakup is never mentioned in the series, nor is the restraining order or any possible evidence that Avery had any sort of history of violence against women.
Yes, it is.
As the series shows, Sandy Greenmeyer is his life now. as is his work on proving his innocence. The show mentions a motion for a new trial that Avery filed back in 2009, but never gets into the substance of it. That motion, incidentally, helps to explain why Avery's brothers, Charles and Earl, are never interviewed for making a murderer.
Actually, Charles is interviewed. Charles does actually talk. Not a lot, but he does. And all the times that he talks, he has, just like everyone else, I think he's been, just like Barb, he's been fucked with by the police. He's been threatened and fed information and told things that were not true. Told that we have this proof that Stephen did this. Okay? And yeah, brother or not, okay, when you have the police telling you, we have this proof, this evidence that your brother killed this woman, you probably are going to believe them. You have no reason not to believe that they have this proof. Now later on, when you find out that that's bullshit, and you can make up your own mind, and they did. They're all with him now. But they definitely had, and I don't blame them a damn bit, they had been screwed with so much. There's so much confusion going on with all of them that they divided them and weakened them so that they could get someone to talk, someone to turn on Stevens, someone to help them convict him. And I think Charles and Barb, at times, they say in the documentary that they believe Stephen's innocent, and at times they say they believe he's guilty because of what they're being fed at the time. All that matters is now that everybody knows everything, now they're able to make up their own mind on what they believe, and they don't believe that Stephen's guilty. They definitely don't believe that Brendan is guilty. So that's all I think that matters now.
Because Stephen names them as Teresa Halbach's possible killers. He also points to his brother-in-law, Scott Taddick, and nephew, Bobby Dassey, Brendan's older brother. This is fascinating, because by naming only family members as possible alternative suspects, Avery is all but conceding that the murder happened on his family's property.
Okay. Stephen did actually name some of his family members as being alternate suspects, and he also named non-family members as well. One particular customer, especially. That just shows that he had limited knowledge of any sort of investigation. He has no idea about Teresa's previous appointments and how those interviews with the police went, all the suspicious nonsense that went on with one of those people that I'm not going to name. There's plenty of other alternate suspects. Stephen only knows some. Okay? Don't know how many his attorneys might know, but I do know that that's all been sorted out now, and the alternate suspects, ex-boyfriend, roommate, brother, previous or last appointment for Teresa that day, depending on which version you believe, the police actually thought that she had another appointment after Stevens, going by her phone records and her movements, and then they changed it all very conveniently for court and said that Stephen was the last appointment that she had. So, whatever. He's not saying that the murder happened on his property. He's saying that plenty of other people had exactly the same opportunity, the same access to Teresa while she was there on the property. All these other people were also there. If she was followed off of the property by them, or she was met up with somewhere outside the property. They knew she was there because they saw her there. All these people were there at that time. All these people saw her there at that time. And yeah, definitely not saying that she was killed there just because of that. He's saying that all these other people had opportunity. He had no motive. And unfortunately, that's part of the problem. He can't, and his attorneys can't prove motive for any of these other people. All they can do is show the same information that he had, which was opportunity, means, and in close proximity. All these other people also had that. No one can prove motive for anyone, not even Stephen. I mean, if you want to say rape, any other male would have the same exact motive too, could have. So, I don't think rape was the motive, but if that's what you want to call it, they all also could have had the same motive.
Remember, one of the defense's key assertions at trial was that Teresa Halbach left Avery's property and was then killed somewhere else before her body was burned, possibly in a quarry, and then brought back to Avery's burn pit in an effort to frame him. Naming only other people who lived on the property essentially confirms what the prosecution was able to demonstrate, that Teresa Halbach did in fact die on the Avery family salvage lot.
Okay, no. Again, that does not mean that she died there. And there is evidence. There's more than enough evidence to show that she actually was killed somewhere else. She was killed somewhere else and moved in her car. There's no reason in the world for Stephen to have ever needed to put her in the back of her own car. Whether he killed her in the house or in the garage, there's just no reason to ever have had to put her in the car at all. Unless you're saying that Stephen took her off the property to burn her. But please tell me what makes any kind of sense of someone taking a girl that they've just killed off of the property to burn her body and then bringing it back and dumping it right there in your own backyard. Why would anyone do that? That makes no sense at all. Actually, that shows that someone else killed her, burned her somewhere else, because it couldn't have been done in the burn pit. There's just too much to show that it wasn't done in the burn pit. Being the fire couldn't have been big enough, hot enough, enough fuel, open flame to burn a body to that condition. Not to mention, no one smelled anything. No one saw anything, unless you believe Brendan's very coerced confession that he saw something. Other than that, no one did. And the bones being in a quarry, the bones being in the Janda burn barrel, hopefully I'm saying that right, just shows that burn barrel was used at least to transport those bones possibly from the quarry. The quarry might have been the original dump site until someone decided that they were gonna, let's take them over and dump them in Stephen's backyard, okay? Who knows? She could have been burned at the quarry, she could have been originally dumped there, but either way, whoever scooped up all those bones and put them in the burn barrel to transport obviously did not believe that they left any behind at the quarry or in the burn barrel. They're dumping things out, and these things are so small that they can't be tested for DNA. There's no way to test them or say that they're for sure Teresa's bones. But it's pretty obvious. I mean, unless there's another dead body around here, it's pretty obvious that that's what they're from. So it just makes no sense to burn someone somewhere else, and then bring them back to your own house. Okay? The only way that makes sense is if somebody is trying to frame him. And, I'm completely open-minded, all right? I did not come into this thinking, oh my God, he's innocent. I'm going to prove it. No, I came into it with an open mind. Wow, this is really suspicious. This is really weird. I want to look into this. And this is what I've figured out. This does make sense if you look at it that way. If you look at it the other way, the way the prosecution is trying to say, I'm sorry, that makes no sense at all. I mean, no one, I don't care how stupid you want to call them, no one is that stupid. No one's going to frame themselves. That's just dumb.
Avery's post-conviction hearings and appeals are all but ignored in this episode, though, as Making a Murderer instead focuses on Brendan Dassey's supposedly ineffective assistance of counsel, likely the only legal argument that could possibly be successful for either of the two men. In truth, Dassey may have a reasonable claim that he was not adequately represented by Kaczynski, but remember, Kaczynski did not represent him at trial. This makes vacating Dassey's conviction much more difficult, since he is not arguing that the attorneys who actually did represent him before a jury were ineffective. Rather, his post-conviction attorneys present an incredibly misleading claim that Kaczynski and his investigator Michael O'Kelly were secretly working with the prosecution at the same time they were supposed to be working for Dassey. Listen to how the actual allegation is made.
So in a sense, they were working for the prosecution. They were working for the police and working for Mr. Kratz to build their case against Stephen Avery, while at the same time damaging Brendan's chances.
In a sense.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there, mister. First of all, I don't know that it was secret, that he was secretly working with the state. Because he, like I said, before he'd ever even met Brendan the first time, before he ever talked to Brendan the first time, he's given all kinds of interviews to the media, which is awesome to watch that guy's face when he denies that he said basically that his client is guilty and plea bargain is a possibility. That saying that he was influenced by his older uncle, who could be described as evil incarnate, is basically what he was saying. And I think it's amazing that he denied saying that, and then it was played to him in court, and watch his stupid little smile come off his face and pucker up into a butthole just made me laugh. You giant piece of shit. You were working with the state, and like I said, I don't know if that was a secret or not, but I'm looking at 3 emails. One from Len Kaczynski to Tom Fassbender, saying that this confirms that you and Investigator Wiegert may re-interview Brendan Dassey tomorrow at the Sheboygan County Juvenile Detention Center regarding the offenses he is charged with in Manitowoc County case number blah and related matters. No consideration is being offered by the state for this additional information at this time. Brennan has personally authorized this interview in a discussion with me. The interview may occur without my personal presence, as I have some military duties to attend to on May 13th. And as I understand it, the interview will be videotaped at another facility. That's one, okay? There's one, sending this to Tom Fassbender by Len Kaczynski, saying, you can interview my client without my presence, which is finally what got the asshole kicked off as Brendan's attorney. Thank God he did that. Here's one from Len Kaczynski to Ken Kratz. Mark, our investigator, Mike O'Kelly, has developed some information in the course of talking to Brendan's relatives, but not Brendan, that might shed some light on, this is really hard to read by the way, it's kind of blurry, on the whereabouts of the Suzuki and Barb's van, which may contain some evidence useful in this case. You are authorized to talk to him directly, and gives his phone number, or by email at the address above in the CC. This appears to me to be insufficient and in and of itself to establish probable cause for another search of the Avery salvage yard. However, it may go a long way toward getting you there. We would prefer to stay unnamed in any affidavit for search warrant if at all possible. And then, it goes on. Yeah. Tell me that this guy was not trying to help the state? Now, this is the last part I'm going to go into before I end this video, but I'm going to read this famous letter from Mike O'Kelly to Lynn Kaczynski because this just makes me sick. Mike tells, Len, I am learning the Avery family history and interactions within and and about each member of the Avery family. These are criminals. These are members engaged in sexual activities with nieces, nephews, cousins, in-laws. Anyone else is fair game to these people. They have a history of stalking females who have no connection to this group. Customers and or their relatives unwittingly become victims of their sexual fantasies and thus are stalked. The victims have no idea that they are being victimized. This is truly where the devil resides in comfort. Messages. I can find no good in any member. These people are pure evil. This is where one would eat their young to justify a control issue where none previously existed. Steve Avery needs to be removed from society. I believe that his male siblings could have a role in Teresa's crime scene. I believe that Earl may have disposed of evidence and Chuck may have ignored Steve's physical movements during this period of time while he was transporting Teresa's car to the back of the Avery salvage area. There is no question that Dolores is guiding and directing this behind the scenes. Really? I think that your visit will be counterproductive to our goals for Brendan. It could have Brendan digging his heels in further. He could become more entrenched in his illogical position and further distort the facts. He has been relying on a story that his family has told him what to say about October 31st, 2005. Thus, it will take me longer to undo if I can, even without your visit. We need to separate him from fantasy and bring him to see reality from our perspective. We need to separate him from the unrealistic world that his family resides within. Brendan needs to be alone. When he sees me this Friday, I will be a source of relief. He and I can begin to bond. He needs to trust me and the direction that I steer him into. Brendan needs to provide an explanation that coincides with the facts' evidence. I would like to obtain his confession this Friday. Brendan should provide details of the crime scene and data that has been previously undisclosed that mirrors the crime scene data. Sorry, but by here, there's none left. Just so you know, jerk. However, I will follow your lead and adapt to your decision. It has been interesting to read Brendan's evaluations by the school psychologist, yet he was able to read each question, respond to, draw pictures of his recollection of the crime scene in my interview form. Thanks, Mike. Yeah. Sorry. What exactly? If you go on, these are emails going back and forth about all of the things that Mike O'Kelly is requesting Len to provide for him for his interrogation of Brendan to get him to talk. I will need copies of some discovery such as black-white aerial of crime scene, National Guard, color aerial of crime scene, law enforcement, for sale sign recovered from the interior area of Stephen Avery mobile home, front and back, color photos by law enforcement of victim's car in position on day of November 5th, where it's covered up with branches and stuff. Color photos by Pamela and Nicole Sturm of victim's car in position at daytime of discovery. Recorded transcribed interviews of the following subjects: Stephen Avery, Earl Avery, Charles Avery, Dolores Avery. Anonymous letter, envelopes and contents. Anonymous letter. What does that have to do with Brendan? Are you trying to say that he is the one that sent in the anonymous letter saying that the body was burned in the smelter at 3 a.m. on Friday? Photo of Suzuki inside Stephen Avery's garage. Photos of interior of Stephen Avery mobile home. 8x10 missing person. Teresa Halbach flyer. Electronic copy of available discovery. Photos, documents, reports, and transcripts. Yeah, including that blue ribbon. Remember that? The blue ribbon. Come on. Guy was crying on the stand because they were making him read this awful letter that he sent in court in front of everyone, proving that he and Brendan's attorney were working against their client and working for the state. They were trying to get Brendan to give statements, to give confessions, to give details that would help the state get their conviction on Stephen. Period. They were helping the state. I don't care, call it a secret or not. That's what they were doing. And that's the most awful thing. I don't know how there were not charges brought against these guys. I don't know how the hell that they have a license. And the worst part is Kaczynski as a judge now. He should be disbarred at the very least. I don't know. Criminal charges brought against him. This is a joke. This makes me furious that these guys are still free after what they did to their client. That is... Okay, I'm going to end this video now, and then we'll go back into part 2.